So again, welcome to day 2 of our Textile Design Spring Speaker Series. We are really honored and so excited to have Drew McKevitt and Suzanne Oude Hengel joining us today to talk about performance knitwear, knitwear for footwear. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Megan Kelly.
Hi, I just wanted to again welcome Drew and Suzanne to speak to us. Drew is an alum of the program. She graduated in 2018 and focused in knitting as a grad student. And we are super excited to have her back and talk about what she's been doing since. And just a reminder, use the Q&A function for questions and feel free to say hi to each other in the chat box. All right, Drew and Suzanne, it's up to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us to do this. It's very exciting. So I'm Drew, and
yeah, I'm Suzanne.
So we work together in designing performance for footwear primarily, but I'm based in Petawawa, Ontario in Canada, and Suzanne is based in Arnhem. So here's a little map of that. We are, before we get into how we work as a team, we thought we would just give a brief background about each of us as designers, as a way of just sort of showing our approach to knit and how we work. So I graduated from Jefferson in 2018, so I was going to show some images from my thesis, my time there at the school. I came to textiles with a background in writing, so I used fragments from an ancient Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, and I tried to reassemble his argument for flux in textiles. And it became about exploring like material choices, different levels of opacity, creating a sense of movement, and mostly a lack of pattern repeat. Pattern repeat being such an important part of textile design. So I really explored making things intuitively and being really spontaneous about working within a framework of a knitting technique. What I took away from this that I still come back to as a designer is that working in this intuitive, spontaneous way really made me realize the amount of control you have over the machine and the amount of control over the entire system of rules within knitting, and kind of opens you to the possibilities inherent in knitting. So, and this is the last slide of the thesis, based on these fragments themselves, I also wanted to bring in this idea of opposition in the form of really strict patterning. And that's when I began developing pleated knit fabrics that took inspiration from origami folding techniques. And this kind of relates back to performance, because these pleated fabrics are a great example of how material and structure combine, like performance in a very broad sense, where I want the fabric to perform in that I want it to hold its shape. And that became really about a combination of material and structure. So while I was working on my thesis, I interned at Anthropologie, and this is just some images of what I did there. My biggest takeaway from this experience was the importance of designing, even if you're designing things by hand, on hand machine, which is what I still use, thinking about how you're going to manufacture it is important. So like this pointelle sweater, originally it had like a transfer every course, which of course is really time consuming to knit on an industrial machine. So it became about finding a balance and distilling what do you like about that stitch into something that's more manageable. This is my current setup. So after I graduated, I moved back to Canada and I have a basement. So I set up my studio in the basement. And yeah, I mostly work on hand machines now. Well, I only work on hand machines now. I thought it also would be nice to show just a bit of other personal work that I do. So this other side of my practice is about traditional hand making techniques in textiles, and mainly tatting. And again, it seems like this doesn't have a lot to do with performance, but I think it informs my approach. It's about like rethinking and recontextualizing something that's traditional, which I believe applies to knitting as well. And just another example, this is like an ongoing study where I tat around twigs or whatever. And then this one, similar invasive species, is another study of where I've been making these tassels, again through tatting. And this one is more about color and shape, exploring fractals. So alongside the traditional handmade techniques, I'm also really interested in exploring materials and playing with like the expected use of what a material should be. So like these are kind of older examples, but resin, the dress was from my thesis, which was like a filament coated, a PVC coated filament that I heat pressed. Well, I made little motifs out of it and then I heat pressed them together. And in terms of performance, like material is such an important part of that equation of creating a performance fabric. So these kinds of studies sort of help me to think about the properties of different materials and what I might want to isolate to exploit in a different way for a specific fabric. And then of course, hand in hand with material is the structure itself. And for me, I'm really like a zoomed in knit person. Like I like to focus at the stitch level as opposed to like an overall shape. I think for me, it comes down to like the shape is created by the stitch structure or it influences the shape. I find that kind of an interesting spot. And just a few more examples, like I like to mash up different techniques and structures together. I like to do things that are kind of complex. And of course, sketchbook is really important as well. I don't keep as many sketchbooks as I did when I was in school, but it's still like I mostly work by making samples, but you still kind of need a place to look at them and evaluate them. So keeping a sketchbook for imagery and materials and a place to collect and collate that information is still quite important. And then that brings me to my personal research with Suzanne. So we began working together a few years ago. I applied for an internship I saw on her Instagram. I did not expect to hear back at all because she's in the Netherlands. But we spoke and we agreed we would see what happened. And then she started sending me yarns and it just got awesome, amazing. So the approach when we initially started, and I think continues still, is just about iterating as many ideas as possible in these small little samples, this is what I bring to it, because I work on the domestic equipment. So like I have this immediate ability to just like churn out ideas and quickly like take in information and come to another idea. So this was also my first real introduction to performance knit. And we kind of started with like upper research. And Suzanne wouldn't tell me how to make an upper. So there was like this, it was cool because there's no pre-existing notion of how things are supposed to fit together. And, you can Google what does an upper look like, but it's more interesting to kind of try to find it yourself, I think. So you can see like this results in some messes, but then it's also gives you things that you can continue to work from. Like everything is about building off of something else. And these are some more examples. We kind of, we think of them as like knit sketches. And you can kind of see like with the heel, I often like to isolate a specific area and just focus on that. Like, how can that be shaped? But, all these images are kind of shaping different ways of providing shape. Just more sketching with knit samples. try to like create research questions that are specific, like how can we integrate a lacing system? How can we provide support in key areas? I feel like the drive is so much about discovery and the need to discover, or like the need to figure something out. And then I would like to end my little section on this slide. This is like my all-time favorite knit stitch at the moment, Ottoman. And I see Suzanne is laughing because I always bring this up when we're developing something, but I just love it. I feel like there are so many potentials with like, and it's another good example of like taking a traditional knit stitch that you would see in sweater knits and recontextualizing it. But there's so many different variations of what you can do with this. And it's like a great way of building a lot of stiffness and support in one area while having stretch in another. And that's all kind of happening within the stitch in a way. So I'm gonna hand over to Suzanne and she'll talk through her background.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. Indeed, yeah, very accurate Ottomans indeed. Yeah, so I'm Suzanne Oude Hengel. I'm a knit developer and footwear innovator, working very much like Drew as well introduced herself. I think that's why we work so well together. I graduated as a product designer, and then afterwards I kind of specialized more in flatbed knitting and the industrial flatbed knitting. And I work mainly in collaborations and on personal projects. Here you can see like my graduation work. So these were, so as I said, I graduated from a product design background, and my intention was to create like one-piece uppers and to play around with color and shape. Yeah, can you go to the next one? Yeah. So after university, I had the opportunity to go to SANTONI, who is a circular machinery maker. I think that's the right word. They have a program called SANTONI Pioneer Program, and they kind of invited talent to play around there and educate them. And I got the opportunity to go, and it was so good to be like immersed in like, yeah, like how the industry works and what the possibilities are, and working with like those industrial machines. Like here on this slide, you can see how I was playing around on a hosiery machine and trying to create shape and create a shoe, kind of use the machine in a different way. And here the technician I was working with kind of thought, oh, it's funny, she's Dutch, so let's use the color orange. But I was kind of like not super happy. So I thought like, what about we change the feet? So there were 4 feet. So on 2 of them, I put another color. And this then this color effect came out. And really highlighted the structure much more. And yeah, I could, they kind of flew in the mold of my sole, which I made for my graduation. And then I could make a real shoe in China back then. One other project I worked on there was like the sock machine as well. Yeah, so after actually like being immersed like in the, like having contact with the industry, I kind of realized I really wanted to specialize more on working on industrial flatbed knitting machines. So I became first an intern at the Textile Museum, and then a technician there, which I worked there for 5 years, and it was a great experience to learn like the technical side of yeah, knitting. alongside working at the Textile Museum, I set up my company as well afterwards. So in which I focus on first on personal research projects, which are more business cards. And then I work as well on client-related projects. So here you can see a little bit of a research project.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So very much playing around with what a structure does and what the opportunity is, and like very much based in the colors and aesthetics as well. And here I was the same as Drew, like focusing on an area and trying to see where it could apply nicely. Yeah. So this is like a 3D knits, like spacers, we call them. And it's a project I did with Milou Voorwinder, and we researched like how to create three-dimensional spacers, and really playing around with the material. So the functionalities coming from the yarn, but as well coming from the structure. So how Drew explained it before, like very much like zooming in and working on a stitch level, and therefore, yeah, really engineering like a new material. This is very much same type of research. So at the museum, at the Textile Museum, they had like ADF. It's a knitting machine which has like a feed that can an extra feature that can combine knitting and weaving in the same time. So I thought, oh, what about I work around waffle weaves and include like merge like bindings from weaving into knits. So here I tried that, and in different kind of forms and like sizes. And as well playing with materials. Yeah. And here you can see like, I don't really sketch, but like I have like my own way of kind of indeed sketching or collaging. And this is, it's either throughout knitting or then throughout just combining things together, and then creating like a global picture of where to go towards. I don't make tech bags or anything like that other designers do. Here you can see as well some visual research. I like to make inspiration books, or when I had the time to do that at school. This dates from back a few years, but I still like make those combinations in like for client work to create a new kind of language, or to create like a new perspective on what things can be. So this is more like client work in, I guess this was 2018 already. My God, it's so long ago. I was invited to participate to Construct 10061, which was a program or like a workshop week, innovation week, you could call, research, kind of collaborative process with other designers, initiated by Concept Gigs for Timberlands, and we were flown into Dominican Republic to work at the factories of Timberlands, and we could just reinvent the yellow boots and how what opportunities were to create a new style. So here you can see some experiments, just kind of deconstructing and reassembling the whole identity and boots, and it was, I think, one of the best projects I ever done. It was such a cool project. Yeah. In that same year, I was invited to participate to Sneakers for Breakfast, together initiated by Takashi Murakami. We were together with 5 other designers to make like shoes for like a good, how do you say it, like a good cost. They were sold, there were auctions, and I chose to work based off like a artwork of Takashi, and then created a shoe for that, and it was presented in LA that same year. Yeah, so this is some research. Yeah, and then moving on to how we work within the studio. We are like at this moment moving towards a little bit more than this team, but here you can see like a team of 4 or 5 people, and we all work remotely. We do like work for clients, collaboration, but as well personal research. So you can see Ella and Rihanna, and of course Drew, who you know already. So I really like to work besides the machine. I think that's like one of the key reasons that people want to work with me. So here you can see like I create the programs myself. I thread and like handle the machines as well. And this is actually our newest purchase. It's we purchased like our own machine together with a knitter, a much more experienced knitter. But we have access to our own stole machine since a few months. Yeah, so true.
Yeah, we also, so Suzanne works like right beside the machine, and then I, because we're remote, I do a lot of domestic development in my studio. So I liked this image, just shows you the different parts of a domestic machine. I mean, I don't know it's showing you that much, but we like to use domestic hand samples as like a way of, especially at the beginning of a project, to kind of generate a lot of ideas and kickstart things. Again, we like think of them as sketches. So it's a way to explore material, structure, sometimes even color. And then this is like kind of a nice overlay of just a bunch of samples. And you can kind of see in this image how things connect, how they grow from each other. And yeah, this is all domestic ideation. So yeah, that's typically how we work. Like we will start small on a domestic machine, and then we will build from that. Suzanne will take it and program and make like add more and distill what's really like crucial for the platform.
Yeah, indeed, or combine things that are complicated to do on a hand knitting machine, or it's always very nice to not start from scratch. Indeed, yeah. Yeah, here you can see like a little bit how we kind of problem solve throughout research. We often ask ourselves like the question like, what if we could do it this way, or can we turn it around? And we're very much like trying to simplify the production process. For example, just minimize it to one piece upper, include as well like develop the material and like engineer different zones. So we're really trying to push the boundaries a bit of what is possible, and yeah. Oh yeah, so here you can see like this is a bit back from Santoni, but here you can very much see like how circular knitting, let's say like a tube, is like applied in a different in a different way. It's really kind of thinking outside of the box, like how can we use the machine in a different way? How can we push it a bit?
And this is another example of kind of like a problem solving moment, where I was wanting to create an upper shape, but not use any fashioning or like traditional kinds of shaping methods. So you can see like the purple example is pretty good. Like you can see it's basically a rectangle, but then using tuck stitches and these pleat lines, you're creating the shape of the upper. It's not like the problem is not solved necessarily, but it's maybe offering like another opportunity, another way of doing it.
Yeah, indeed, in a way, like another perspective, right? As well, like, oh, this is what can be done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So instead of, traditionally starting with the toe and working up, like you're starting with everything, all the needles and the whole length all around the shoe at once. So then, yeah, you can think there's other ways to think about this. Like I could continue and think, how would patterning work like this? Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, well said.
So that's our presentation. Thank you very much. I hope that was informative and hopefully inspiring. I think that was the main thing we were hoping to go for with that, for students especially. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Drew and Suzanne, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Lots of questions to get to.
Okay, great.
And because I'm speaking, I actually get to ask one of mine first. So it's clear that both of you are driven by the possibilities inherent in equipment and also really interested in pushing beyond the normal capabilities of the equipment. And so my question is how much does that interest, that the interest that you have in pushing beyond what is expected or what has been done in the past, like how much does that drive decisions about what projects you accept?
Well, Suzanne, I think you probably can answer, but I'm going to answer as well at first. I think Suzanne picks projects that are interesting. Like I also think people approach her because of this. Like, everyone who's approached Suzanne has seen her work, so they know that this is important. Like this, it's going to be different, and it's going to be like more of a research-based project. But
yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit like versatile, right? Because it's sometimes only the aesthetic part that like client is interested by the use of color, for example, and that's like a good, yeah, like a good reason to work. Like it's very, very nice to research on that part, and sometimes it's more in depth, but it's yeah, I think that's like the most enjoyable part, indeed, absolutely. But I think in the end, like we're a business, so it's as well like coming down to like, can we pay like everything in this month? Like, what do we need? So if we need like an extra project that is only about color, I think we would consider it. But we're getting more and more at a very interesting place where we can choose and filter out like the more interesting projects.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think Megan has our next question.
I do. I have lots of questions. A fantastic presentation. Thank you. So I find that shoes are very in. They're very, they're kind of a trophy object. People accessorize with them as well as them being a completely functional piece of our clothing. But they're very intimate and small. And I was wondering if you have ever wanted to work big and if you are interested in the challenges that that would bring about.
Yeah, I think to me, I've always like liked the size of a shoe, that it's like very functional. It is very small, and it has like a lot of restraints and functionalities to answer. So I really like that. But lately I've been like curious about like other industries or other disciplines, or indeed working bigger. But there is no project of yet like that is happening, but I'm open to that in the future. Yeah. Maybe Drew, how do you think about that?
I like, that was something I actually thought of when we started, and I started like looking at shoes. I like that they're smaller. It's definitely a different thing. Like if you're thinking about making a sweater or something that size or even bigger, like especially on a domestic machine, there's so many more things that can go wrong with the bigger it gets. So I kind of like the compactness of it, and it's almost like you have a smaller amount of time and space to get your point across, like to make that work. I think that's an interesting kind of like what Suzanne is saying about the constraint of it is interesting.
Yeah, I would be curious as well to apply it in a sector maybe that it's not like very commonly used, like take it out of the context. I think that is very like answering again like the question what if, or how can we solve that, or like what if we turn it upside down kind of thing. Those are to be continued, I would say.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the shoe, right? So you're turning corners, you're making three-dimensional objects. Like, how else can you apply these skills and techniques to other objects or other things? Anyway, that's something that I'm deeply interested in. So I will be watching your page closely to see what you guys do next for sure. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask a technical question that came through. We know that Drew works on domestic machines, and Suzanne, you work on industrial machines. Do they match in gauge? Like, are they the same cut? And if they're not, how do you approach that in the design process?
Yeah, that is a good question. So no, they don't. I think Suzanne, your machine is 14.
Yeah, indeed, the multi-gauge,
Yeah, and I work on a pass-up mostly, so that's like 8, 7 or 8. So they don't really, but I think it's a challenge for me. So I feel like material helps a lot, the elastic helps a lot. But what I usually do is I double up elastic so that I get more of like the firmness that you would have for using one end on a smaller gauge machine. So that's kind of how I balance it. But of course, the scale is different. And we do find that sometimes, like I will make a little sample and then Suzanne will knit it and it doesn't look right, or it's not quite the same. There are differences. It does happen.
Indeed. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is a big gap from like translating from one technique to another. But the change is coming, like
There. Yeah,
indeed. So Drew is gonna be we're gonna set her up with a industrial like hand knitting machine. So then that gap will be
I'm excited for that. I love to have like a new thing to play with. It's great.
That sounds super exciting, actually. And then kind of related to that, and you did mention, like, what kind of materials are you using? Is it just elastics and nylons, or are you using different kinds of fibers?
Yeah, all kinds of fibers. Yeah, indeed. And I think maybe as well a little bit of the unconventional ones, that are applied to other industries. And yeah, obviously very like bold colors, or like, you know, like yarns that have like a functionality given with them that maybe shrink very much, or become hard after steaming, or have other properties that are interesting. Yeah.
That leads into a question that I had, which is so what do you do in terms of finishing these fabrics or these products? Are there processes or techniques that you use?
I would say that depends on like the material you use. Most often, of course, I would say like just steamed, you know, that's like the very obvious one. But it depends like on what yarn manufacturer recommends to use, and then me like tweaking a bit, like, oh, maybe it's better this way, or yeah.
Thank you. So there's questions have come through. So Drew, this one's specific to you, although we'd be happy to have both of you answer it. So Drew, you spoke about Ottoman being your all-time favorite knit stitch at this time.
At the moment.
At the moment. So have there been others in the past?
Yes. Yeah, I think the other one is Plush or Carpet Pile. I really love that. That's another favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And have there been others? I've also liked Pointel in the past, but I'm kind of not as into it anymore. But yeah. I don't know. Ottoman, just like when I started doing that with the technical yarns, like I just saw it in a new light. Like it just looked so much like so good. I love it in the context of performance.
Thank you. And Suzanne, do you have favorites as well in terms of?
Yeah, good one. I really loved like the spacers for a long time. Now what would I say? Like I think the waffles as well. I think it's kind of the research that is most recent, you know, like what I'm working on at the moment. But I think it's most often like the personal research, I would say. Like it's rarely like the client work that catch like that much my attention.
And did that stem from your time working at the Textile Museum and Textile Lab? That's I've had the opportunity to visit there, and what a fantastic operation. And when you were saying you'd been there for 5 years, I'm thinking, okay, now when was I there? So I'm going to have to kind of mentally backtrack and see if you might have been there when I visited. But in your time there, did you have the opportunity to pursue both client projects and also personal projects on the equipment?
Indeed, so it was kind of. I was a little bit of a hybrid. So I was part-time technician there. So threading, repairing, and like running productions for the museum. So that was like part-time, but they kind of opened the doors for me to get like trained on like the software on M1 Plus. But as well open the doors for like projects to get in and to run them first together with like the product developers, which was not my role there at the time. And then bit by bit, because I was getting trained and I knew how the machines worked and like how everything worked, basically, I was transitioning to doing them myself. And at the end, just before I quit it, I was kind of basically doing everything already by myself. Of course, like no 3D knit type of like knit and wear type of products, but yeah, I could develop like footwear uppers and other type of things myself.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Another question that has come through is, what role does color play in making and sampling? And how do you choose colors? And is it based on trend research?
No, that last one never. It's like all intuition. It's like all like what I don't know. I would say like what I see or what I like or what I what appeals to me. Never indeed trends research. And yeah, color is so essential. I think if I wouldn't have that, it's like I don't know. I couldn't work. Like then yeah, no. So. Yeah, very essential.
Mhm.
And another somewhat related question came through. How or where do you approach the beginning of a project? Like how do those seeds start?
Yeah, Drew, how would you say?
Well, I think so. We get usually a brief from a client. Well, if it's a client work, or even I think if it's research, personal research, it starts with a brief, maybe some inspiration gathering, and then along that same time, like I start sampling on the domestic machine, and maybe we talk a bit about like we do give a direction of like with inspiration, like maybe it's this kind of feel or this kind of structures. Sometimes color, but honestly, that doesn't always play into it. Like, I think I kind of, yeah, I just, like, I have yarns here and I just sort of use what I have. I don't always focus on like the final, it's never about the final idea of what it's supposed to look like. So it starts with like a bunch of little samples, and then maybe we like play with them on a last and see like where can this go? Like that's a big part of it, like photographing. And then everything, like, because we're remote, so everything gets done online. So we share images and then like share notation and like technical info. And then I send samples like eventually physically to Suzanne. But yeah, that's how we start.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. I don't know if I'm missing.
No, very good. And I think we call a lot like in between, you know, like a lot of like brainstorm or yeah, we would kind of Drew would explain and that would spark something for me. So there are a lot of brainstorms, I would say. And yeah.
And how long, you might have said this in the beginning, excuse me, forgive me if I missed it. How long have the two of you been working together?
I think it's been like since 2019 or like, well, it started off like, so it started for me as an internship really, like, and very, like I wasn't really involved so much in what, like in Suzanne's projects, like I was sort of like, it was what an amazing experience. Like, here's some yarn, you play and you share your, I like send it back. And then more gradually, like I started to become more involved with certain projects. So I guess technically since 2019, but not fully until, I don't know, like last fall, maybe.
Yeah, I think you work like, yeah, like a big year already, like maybe a little bit more than a year, 1.5 years, I would say. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Quite a long time.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So truly all of that has been during the pandemic. And I'm wondering how if you envision, as we're hopefully moving out of the pandemic, if you envision your working relationship changing in some way because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it hasn't changed throughout the pandemic. For us, it was normal to work remotely, like with or without pandemic. So we were just like business as usual and like working as we did. I think the increase of business within the company changes a lot. I think that is and like the changes within the studio just changes like how we work together, for me at least, right? True.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have never met in person. That's one thing. I haven't met anyone in the company in person. I'm just in this small town in Canada, and I've not met anyone. So I think I would like to meet everyone eventually, but I don't know that we'll be like working side by side ever, but maybe at least we could have a trip, you know.
Yeah, for sure. We will make that happen. Yeah. Sooner rather than later. Yeah. Yeah. To be continued.
We have a great question that came through. Do you have any advice for people looking to enhance their architectural knitting skills without access to knitting machines?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Access to a machine.
Well, you have your hands. You can always use them to create like big knits. But I don't think that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take away I would say like try to find access to a domestic machine at least. You can do hand knitting, but then if you're really wanting to do more of like, you know, not going to be quite right, and the materials you can use are maybe not suitable for hand knitting. Like I wouldn't want to hand knit with elastic, like two ends of elastic would be very frustrating, I think. So yeah, I would say I think you kind of need it.
Yeah, indeed. Or maybe partner up with a company that has access to knitting machines. I think that's always, but indeed, like access as a whole to knitting machines is like I think like the worst thing ever. That's such a nightmare. I can imagine for all students and everything, like after graduating, then all of a sudden there is no access whatsoever. Of course, hand knitting machines, that's like, okay, but then if you want to do industrial, that's like so much money and like so much knowledge and such a step up, like, yeah, that's a big gap.
Yeah.
And it's a good time for me to give it just a little bit of a commercial for us in that we do have on campus, we do provide access to alums or to industry members. You know, it's a fee structured program, but there are some opportunities to access equipment on campus once you're, you know, if you're no longer a student or if you're an interested party. So, but yes, because we agree, like that kind of access, when you're accustomed to having that access, especially in an educational setting, and now you don't. Yes, I'm sure that that's a challenge for people.
Yeah, it takes a lot to get back to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do also believe that you can always find a way. You know, is it going to be as easy as when you had access on a daily basis? Perhaps not, but I think if it's what you're passionate about, you will find a way. You will make those connections. You know, and I think about the fact that Drew, you reached out to Suzanne through an internship posting that you saw on Instagram, and look at what it has led to.
Yeah, amazing, right? I was so attracted to Suzanne's work. It was the spacers, actually, like why I started following her. I just thought that was so cool because she's doing that on a weft knitting machine. Like, this is really cool to me. What a great experience, you know, like I had not really thought about performance so much, and like, cool, very cool. So I guess it's a good example, like you need to be open to just trying things.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe stepping in the deep, as scary it can be, or like as you don't know what can happen, right? I think it counts the same for me, though.
To me, what that says is that you both have this really wonderful passion and curiosity, and that drives you forward. So
Yeah.
So I think with that, we are going to say thank you so much to Drew and Suzanne for your brilliant presentation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us and with our audience. We very much appreciate you having been with us. Again, great thanks to Drew and Suzanne. And
Yeah.
we look forward to watching your progress.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.